Let's face it, valuable receivers are made up of more than receptions and receiving yards. Yards per reception and touchdowns scored can show the explosiveness and a nose for the end zone. That's why I combined these four stats to create the FGV, the Football Guy Valuation. And that's how I determined the top 10 most valuable receivers of the 1990s. Okay, the top 10 most valuable receivers of the 1990s. Number 10, Tony Martin. Martin was drafted in the 5th round of the 1989 draft by the New York Jets. He was later waived by the Jets before opening day and was picked up as a free agent by the Miami Dolphins prior to the 1990 season. He was a rotational player for his first 5 seasons in the league and turned into a full-time starter his second 5 seasons. During the 90s, he caught 530 passes for 8,124 yards, 53 touchdowns, and a 15.33 yards per catch average. He made the Pro Bowl in 1996 and ended his playing career in his final season for Atlanta. Number 9, Andre Reed. Andre Reed was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 4th round of the 1985 draft. He cracked the starting lineup right away in 1985 and would be a starting receiver for 15 of his 16 years in the league. He played his first 15 years with the Bills, catching passes from Jim Kelly, and he made the Pro Bowl 7 years in a row from 1988 to 1994. During the 90s, he caught 624 passes for 8,687 yards, 55 touchdowns, and posted a 13.92 yards per catch average, propelling him into the Hall of Fame. Okay, number 8, Rob Moore. Moore was the first overall selection of the 1990 draft by the New York Jets. He was a starter all 10 years of his career. He made the Pro Bowl in 1994 and 1997. He was a first-team All-Pro in 1997 as well. He hauled in 628 passes in his career for 9,368 yards, 49 touchdowns, and a 14.92 yards per catch average. His average carried him just in front of Andre Reed on the FGV scale by 3.43 points. Number 7, Irving Fryar. Fryar started his 17-year career as the first overall selection in the 84 draft with the New England Patriots. He didn't crack the starting lineup until 1985, when he was good enough to make the first of his 5 Pro Bowls in his career. He played for the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Eagles, and finished with the Redskins during the 90s, and caught 624 passes for 9,172 yards, 52 touchdowns, and a 14.7 yards per catch average. Fryar scored 3 more touchdowns than Rob Moore, which carried him into 7th spot on our list. Number 6, Herman Moore. Herman Moore was another first-round selection, this time at number 10 in the 1991 draft by the Detroit Lions. He didn't make the starting lineup until 1992 and made the Pro Bowl for 4 straight years from 1994 to 1997. He also was a first-team All-Pro for 3 straight years from 95 to 97. He led the league in receptions in 95 and 97 with 123 and 104 receptions respectively. During the 90s, he caught 626 passes for 8,664 yards, 59 touchdowns, and a 13.84 yards per catch average. Clearly, his touchdowns carried him in the FGV rankings. Number 5, Andre Rison. Andre Bad Moon Rison, another first-round pick from the 89 draft by the Colts, lasted only 1 season with the Colts as he was part of a package trade to the Falcons for what turned out to be quarterback Jeff George. He was a star in Atlanta, making the Pro Bowl 4 years in a row from 1990 to 1993, and also making first-team All-Pro in 1990. During the 90s, he caught 650 passes for 8,779 yards and 74 touchdowns with a 13.51 yards per catch average. While some of the previous players on the list had far more yards and higher averages, Rison was a touchdown machine, securing his place in the 5th spot on my list. Number 4, Michael Irvin. Hall of Famer Michael Irvin was drafted in the 1st round of the 1988 draft by the Dallas Cowboys and never played for a different team during his 12-year career. He made the Pro Bowl 5 consecutive years from 91 to 95 and was also a first-team All-Pro in 1991. He was part of the famous triplets in Dallas, teaming up with Hall of Famers Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith. Now, during the 90s, Irvin caught 692 passes for 10,872 yards, 58 touchdowns, and a 15.71 yards per catch average. Irvin fended off number 5 receiver Andre Rison with nearly 2,000 more yards to offset his 16 less touchdowns. Number 3, Tim Brown. Hall of Famer Tim Brown, another first-round draft pick from 1988 by the LA Raiders, played 17 years in the league. He played his first 16 seasons with the Raiders and finished his career with the Buccaneers in 2004. He made the Pro Bowl 9 times in his career, 7 times during the 90s. He caught 726 passes for 10,211 yards, 70 touchdowns, and a 14.06 average during the 90s. His 70 touchdowns was enough to overtake Michael Irvin and secure his position on my list. Okay, number 2, Cris Carter. Hall of Famer Cris Carter, a 4th-round selection in the 1987 supplemental draft by the Eagles, played 16 seasons in the NFL and was an 8-time Pro Bowler, receiving the honor from 93 to 2000. He was also a 2-time first-team All-Pro selection, once in 94 and again in 1999. He played exclusively for the Vikings in the 90s, where he caught 835 passes for 10,238 yards, 95 touchdowns, and a 12.26 average. He scored nearly 20 more touchdowns than any previous player on our list, making him a lock for the number 2 spot on my list. And the number 1 most valuable receiver of the 1990s is Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time and arguably the greatest player of all time, was selected by the 49ers in the first round of the 1985 draft. He played 20 years in the league, the majority of them with the 49ers, and made 11 of his 13 Pro Bowls consecutively from 1986 through 1996. Now, during that same span, he was a first-team All-Pro every year except for 1991. During the 90s, he caught 860 passes for an incredible 12,078 yards, 103 touchdowns, and a 14.04 yards per catch average. He led the league in receiving yards 4 times and twice led the league in receptions. Congratulations to Jerry Rice for capturing the top spot on my list, and to all the other receivers that made my list, and to those that didn't make my list. Now, it should be noted that Sterling Sharpe may have been a contender to be number 1 on my list had he not suffered a severe neck injury and been forced to retire early. He consistently challenged Rice for the number 1 spot every year from 1990 to 1994. Had he not been injured, he was on pace to put up 900 receptions, 11,840 yards, 104 touchdowns, and a 13.16 yards per catch average. His decade FGV would have been 1,351.78, second to Rice's decade FGV of 1,358.12, a difference of just 6.34 points. Thanks for joining me on my journey, and I hope you enjoyed the 1990s. Let me know in the comments how I did. Who would you include in your top 10 list?